Yes, Tim. Yeah. All right, Shabbat Shalom, y'all. It's good seeing everyone. This is our special Shabbat. We're calling it Repro Shabbat. It stands for Reproductive Rights Shabbat. So thank you for joining us for this very special Shabbat. And so I'm going to ask Stacy, our board president, to come up here and light the Shabbat candles for us. That's on page 120 if you want to follow along.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitchen b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Thank you, Stacy. And to set the intention for this evening, I have a quote I want to offer you by Elizabeth Petrovich. Asking you to give me equal rights implies that they are yours to give. Instead, I must demand that you stop trying to deny me the rights that all people deserve. And with that in mind, we're moving to Hine Ma Tov on page 128 of your prayer books. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. We now turn to page 138 for Lachadodi. We're going to recite paragraphs 1, 5, and 9. And we arrive at paragraph 9. I'm going to ask everyone to stand up and face the entrance as we greet the Shabbat bride. And if anyone's coming late, just lock eyes with them. Make them feel bad for it. Okay, here we go. Lecha dodi likra kalai la 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likra kalai la 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad Hishmiyanu el ha'am yuchad Adonai echad Ushmo echad Lishem letiferet v'le'tihila Lecha dodi likra kailai la 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likra kalai la 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 Pnei Shabbat nekabelam. Hitori, kiva ore kuhumihi ohori. Uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alaik negila, lecha dodi likra kai lai, la la lai, la la lai, la la lai, panei Shabbat, nekabela, lecha dodi likra kai lai, la la lai, la la lai, la la lai, panei Shabbat, nekabela. Please rise. Boi v'shalom, ateret ve'ala, gam desmicha u'v'tzola, toch emune na'am segula, boi chala, lecha dodi likra kalai, la 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 la, panei Shabbat, nekabela, lecha dodi likra kalai, la 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 la, panei Shabbat, nekabela. You may be seated. We now move to page 142 for Shalom Alechem. Shalom Alechem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boechem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We now turn to 144. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba, be'el madi rachiote v'yamlik malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala, uv'izman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Le'olam Ulal Me'al Maya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yipromam, V'yitnasem, V'yitadar, V'yitale, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudusha Barichu, Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma, v'imaru, amen. We now turn to page 146, and I invite you to rise for the Baruch Hu. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Lie, 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 lie. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hamevorach, Hamevorach, Le'olam Ba'ed. Hamevorach, Hamevorach, Le'olam Ba'ed. You may be seated. Let's read together the English on top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sails of the stars, creator the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night as heaven spans to infinity, and you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim. Let's also read now the bottom part of page 151 together in the English. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love, this holiest of your works, in the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We now move to the Shema on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Avad. 154. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol avecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meyodecha v'hayu hadevarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinartam levarnecha v'divartam ba'am v'shiftecha b'veitecha Uvaktecha havaderech, ushofbecha ukumecha, ukshartam leyot al yadecha, v'hayilototafot beineinecha, uktaftam al mezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha. Lema'an tizkeru v'asitem et chol mitzvotai, v'yitem kiddoshim leiloechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotziti etchem eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. Moving over to 158. Lie, 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 Nedar Bakodesh, no Ratihilot Osefela, no Ratihilot Osefela, la 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 We now move to the Shamru on page 162. The Shamru v'nei Yisrael and Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berito lam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berito lam. B'nei Ruvain, B'nei Yisrael, B'nei Yisrael, Oti leolam, V'shamru, B'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, Lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berito lam, Ki sheshet yamim, Asa Adonai, Asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et haaretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat lasot et hashabat ledorotam berito lam. Ubayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat, lasot et hashabat ledorotam berito lam. We now move to the Amidah on page 164. When you arrive there, I invite you to stand with us. Adonai, Sefatai Adonai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Avoteinu v'Imoteinu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, HaGadol v'Hagibor v'Hanoram, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Kovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, Melech Ozer Mashiach Magen Adonai Magen Avraham Rasara Atagibor Le'olam Adonai V'chayei Avolat Hara V'Yoshia Mashiach Ruach Umarid HaGashem Mechaper Chaim B'Zemsen Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somei Noflim V'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayei Emunato Lishanei Ahar Michamo Umidom Melach, Melech Memi, Umechayeh, Umatmir Yeshua, Ne'eman Ha'aletz Hayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, V'chayei HaKol. We will now continue silently until we turn until page 180. You may be seated whenever you like. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'akol Yisrael. Vimru, vimru, amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu ve'yakol Yisrael v'imru v'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom. Yakol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'Yakol Yisrael. Okay, well, I'm super thrilled and excited to have two guest speakers this evening for Repro Shabbat. So let me introduce them for you. We have Rose here, who is the State Director for Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates. In their role, Rose directs all of Planned Parenthood's advocacy in the state, including legislative, electoral, organizing, and youth leadership development. And then we also have Ashley, who's born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and I went to high school with, actually, so I was super excited to have Ashley here as well. She moved to Washington, D.C., where she went to college and grad school and started her career. After nearly a decade living in D.C. and 6 years in Seattle, she now lives in Anchorage with her husband, 6-year-old son, and 3-year-old daughter, who are both here, by the way, and 11-month-old son. She's worked in clinical research, public health research, consulting, academia, and now works for the state of Alaska Division of Public Health. And in her personal time, she serves as the board of directors for Planned Parenthood Great Northwest. I'm going to invite Ashley and Rose up here to talk to us a little bit about reproductive rights.
We're left to our own devices. Do you want to go? No, why don't you go first? You're more official.
I wouldn't say that. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to meet you. Yes, like I said, I'm Rose, the state director for Planned Parenthood here in Alaska. I just moved to Anchorage from Fairbanks, so very excited to be here. I feel, yeah, like the prompt was kind of just to talk about the state of things. So right now in Alaska, abortion is still legal. We have a strong constitutional protection, not only in our right to privacy, but the Alaska state constitution also has an equity clause, basically. And that it has been a lot of the basis for recent state Supreme Court cases, that you can't tell one population of people, those that can't get pregnant, that they have different healthcare rights than a population of folks who can get pregnant. So both of those in our state constitution give us the right to access an abortion, but I can't stress enough how even after the fall of Roe, abortion was never truly equitable in this state. People in urban centers, people with resources, people with good jobs all had more access. If you live off the road system, you have to fly to an urban area, which is an undue financial burden. You know, most folks that access an abortion already have children. So that means either bringing your kids with you, which is further cost, or finding someone to watch your children as you travel. If you're in an unsafe relationship, which Alaska has some of the highest rates of interpartner violence, maybe you can't tell your partner why you're traveling or have them safely watch your children. Just a lot of issues around that, you know, everyone feeling, and it is great that it is legal in Alaska, but it was never enough. And we need to always be advocating for folks to have healthcare access in general. You know, what's good for abortion access is good for healthcare, you know, like expanding telehealth. If you have a cold, you know, you know, no matter what it is, you know, it's kind of how always when we bring people from the margins to the center and let them decide, you know, the solutions for themselves and communities, it benefits everyone. And healthcare is no different than that.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. So I'm Ashley Manai. I was born and raised here in Anchorage. I grew up with Rabbi Abram, and just so happens that we're kind of at similar phases of life together with kids and life and career and everything, which is really fun. But I think one of the privileges and unfortunately luxuries, even though it shouldn't be a luxury, that I have is that I got to choose, you know, for each of the kids that I had. Each of them were extremely planned and very wanted. I have to remind myself that when they're screaming at me and throwing me rooms.
I kind of want to yell at my mom when she's mad. I was watching.
But no, they were all extremely, you know, I got to choose. That was up to me, up to my you know, my husband and I. So I work for the state in public health, and my whole career has been either in like public health or clinical health. So in my mind, not only do I see reproductive rights as issues for women, and issues for, you know, people who can get pregnant, I see it as a healthcare issue, a public health issue. I've always been pro-choice. I don't think I've ever not been pro-choice, but I think one of the experiences that I had in my life that really solidified why I feel so strongly this way is when I was living in Washington, D.C. Shortly after I'd finished my master's in public health. I was working at Children's National Medical Center, which is one of the largest children's hospitals in the country. And I was working, this wasn't planned. This was not intended. I just kind of happened into this job where I was working with the fetal and transitional medicine department. And I was working with, I was doing research with like very, very, very high risk maternal fetal medicine patients, really high risk pregnancies, a lot of really difficult situations. And the situations that I saw, the patients that we encountered, I think really just solidified in my mind why this is not, you know, I think a lot of people have this idea in their mind. They have this stereotypical image of who gets abortions and who has issues that need to have reproductive rights. That's not the case. You know, we have those stereotypes, but it's everyone. Everyone is impacted by reproductive rights, by laws that attack reproductive rights. One of the patients that has always stuck out in my mind, and I brought this up with so many conversations. It was this, you know, husband and wife couple. They had both gone to med school together. They met in med school. They were both in residency in Washington, D.C. One of them was in residency at George Washington Hospital, one of them at Georgetown Hospital. They were, you know, in like the prime of their lives. Things were going so well for them. They had an extremely planned pregnancy, extremely wanted pregnancy. They got to their 20-week anatomical scan and saw that basically the fetus had no brain. The entire brain was just one large cyst that had developed. And unfortunately, the brainstem had developed, but the rest of the brain had not, which means that had this pregnancy been, you know, allowed to go to term, had the baby been born, there would have been a heartbeat and there would have been breathing. And they would have basically just had to watch this human being just die in front of them slowly, which is an awful thing to have to go through. And so I remember watching their story kind of unfold and just how everything played out. And they fortunately were people who had the means and the ability to travel to a place where they were able to get the healthcare that they needed. And she was able to get the care that she needed. And I never followed up with her because that's not something I could do. I like to imagine in my mind that they now have, the family that they wanted and things turned out well for them. I hope that it did. But it just kind of painted this, it really, really, I think, enlightened, that's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? It just put a light on how
Shifted your perspective.
it did,
Yeah.
like how complex the whole issue of reproductive rights are. It's not a black and white issue. It's not a simple thing. It's just not as easy as people like to make it out to be.
Yeah, like, what I say all the time is like, when people are like, well, can you categorize, usually reporters, right? They're like, I need that line, like who accesses abortions in Alaska? And I'm like, everyone. Everyone. And then every single person who had a different reason for getting there, a different reason for making that choice, and a different feeling about that choice.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person had a different story that got them there.
Yep.
And some people feel more than one thing in that moment, but it's just like the overarching thing, like what you said, is no one else should ever get to decide for anyone else what they do with their body, right? And no one should be allowed to legislate that decision. And then we shouldn't be putting exceptions in, because then what that's saying is, I don't trust you inherently and your inherent worth, and you need to jump through hoops and you need to tell these stories that are hard, right? We're like requiring people to tell their stories to just be like, look at me as a human, like see my humanity. And we shouldn't be requiring people in their time when they most need each other and love and support to say, we're going to need you to give us a reason for us to see your humanity.
Yeah.
And also to go to your point too, like something you said made me think of, like also like being pregnant is dangerous.
It is. It's terrifying.
It's emotionally terrifying. My little sister just had her first baby a month ago. And I was like, I'm not even the one carrying this baby and I'm a mess, just like, and she's in Florida. And then when all of this happened, I was like, is my sister going to die because of someone else's belief about what their God told them? It was so terrifying to be like, what if she needs an emergency procedure and now she lives in a state that doesn't think that her life is valuable, that, she gets to make that decision. And also when we look at maternal mortality rates, right, they disproportionately affect especially Black women and Indigenous women. And so by legislating and telling people that they have to carry a pregnancy to term is also saying, we don't value you, right? You don't get to make that cost benefit decision for yourself, and then we also then legislate like where we're like, and if you're poor, you don't get healthcare after the baby, it's just like,
Yeah. And one of the things that really, I think stings about everything that's going on with reproductive rights and policies around it right now is how it's really just widening that gap with disparities. Unfortunately right now, people who have the means will always be able to figure something out, right? I mean, people who have the means will always be able to get to somewhere where they can get something that they need. It's the people who don't have the means, who don't have thousands upon thousands of dollars of disposable income that they can access at the drop of a hat. Those are the people who unfortunately are going to be the ones suffering. But as a society, our lawmakers have said, we don't care about those people.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really the message that we've sent.
Yeah. And I think that also had always been the case. Like I said, even though it was legal, it wasn't accessible, like not just in Alaska. But now what's happened is like what that means to be a person with means, that has shifted, right? And so like the middle class like had access. And now it's just the wealthy class in these, states that have completely lost access. And so we're hearing even more and more stories now, one, because I think people are rightly afraid and are like, I'm going to speak up and tell my story. But because middle class people with a lot of privilege who can tell that story are now like, my wife almost died because, that right after what happened in Texas, this woman almost died because her pregnancy had failed, but she was not miscarrying. And in the state of Texas, they wouldn't save her life by giving her an abortion or miscarriage management until she was about to die. So she started to get septic, but she couldn't travel on an airplane. And the nearest state hospital out of Texas that would provide her an abortion was too much distance, and they were worried she would die en route. And that was the week after the Texas case. Like,
I remember reading that. Yeah.
it's just like, yeah.
No, it is really, yeah. Do any of you all have questions or topics that you want to bring up? Because I would love to.
I could tell an optimistic story. Yeah.
Talking about the backlog for food stamps and Medicaid.
Mhm.
And if it's a backlog for Medicaid enrolled in people, that means people who need abortions through Medicaid are also backlog.
Yeah.
Everybody's just talking about the food stamp thing, but it is.
It's much bigger. It's much bigger. Yeah.
And it's getting
Mhm.
people enrolled in Medicaid.
It's getting people all sorts of services. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question was about just mentioning how there's a backlog right now and people have applied for Medicaid and food stamps, but there's not enough government employees to give them actual Medicaid and food stamps. So I can, we'll go do your question and then.
I can actually provide an update.
Please do.
So I work in
Okay.
the commissioner of public health has seen things. And to whether I'd like to the current plan that they're trying to get put through is using an temp agency to take information from beneficiaries when they call in, so that those who are trained to process the applications can spend their time doing that. So
Okay.
that's how we're trying to do it. She also said that if you are one of the people in that backlog, the Department of Social Services or whatever, and make sure that they have updated information. Or your income is changed, call them as soon as possible first, update that information so that by the time we use their application.
Okay, so that was that the state is going to hire a contracting agent to answer the phones so that the in-state staff can focus solely on processing the information from those phone calls. And you have to update your information by April 1st. And so on that note, I was like, I have some positives. So there is it's called a Medicaid extension spa. And I know, right? I got that and I was like, I hope this reporter doesn't ask me what that means because I don't know what it means right now, but I do know. But anyways, so there's the federal government offered an incentive to states, and there are different Medicaid expansions. And so there's two that we're hoping will pass here in Alaska. And one is that would mean that right now, if you qualify for Medicaid while pregnant, you are kicked off of it 2 months after giving birth. This would extend that to an entire year, and you would get to keep Medicaid for an entire year. It also would mean that if for some reason, when you give birth, you usually don't just want to go right back to work. You're not just like physically ready. And so if you weren't qualified for Medicaid before, and then after giving birth, your income dipped and you qualified, you would now also be able in that year. So that expansion, we're hoping to pass. And then in collaboration with that, because 60% of maternal mortality deaths are preventable, 60% are preventable, so there's also an STI epidemic in the state of Alaska. There's a syphilis outbreak. and a chlamydia outbreak. And so we're hoping to get a expansion to Medicaid that would make the parts for family planning, the income gap greater. So more people would qualify. And that means anyone from the age of, I think it's 15 to 45 is what the government considers your family planning years, regardless of gender, in there eligible for Medicaid family planning services, which covers a wide suite of services. So hoping for both of those to pass to at least start to offer care. Yeah.
I'm mostly curious on how abortion would affect male reproductive rights. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I
Yeah.
can answer it, or do you want
No,
to
go
ask
for it.
public health?
Yeah, I can answer it after you.
Yeah, so right now, our society has made gender extremely divisive. And this idea of individualism, where if it doesn't directly affect me, then it doesn't affect me. Whereas we need to be thinking as community members and whole peoples and families that love each member of that family equally and fight for them to have the same rights and seen as basic human dignity for who they are, right? And so I really frankly want men to step up and understand that your wives and sisters and mothers and aunts and the person who bagged your groceries, right, and your Lyft driver all deserve, the same basic human dignity that you have inherently as well, and it sounds hyperbolic, but right, women are dying because of this.
Literally.
And one day that might be someone that you love, but each time it's someone that someone loves. And so I just really would like to see that interconnectedness, felt more.
And I think it's also worth mentioning that for men, I mean, we all know it takes two parts, right, to make a baby. I mean, if you're the other half of that, you have an obligation after that for 18 years. If there's a baby that's born, you're not off the hook just because you didn't have it in you. So, yeah, it's that simple too.
Cool. We got 2 questions. So it's there, and then
I forgot to add one thing when I got up here. I should have said this very first. So I have mentioned I work for the state, and also I am a board member with Planned Parenthood. I'm not representing either of those right now, so I forgot to mention.
Say more than I can say. I'm representing Planned Parenthood, so if we ever need a spicy answer.
So I'm not representing anyone other than me right now, so please don't hold anyone accountable other than me for anything I say. But continue. Yes, I saw a couple of hands. Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to add that not everyone who needs an abortion is a woman.
Yes.
That is actually a really great point. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. And that's why you've probably seen we've tried to switch to people who can get pregnant, because it needs to be trans and gender inclusive. It also needs to stop having this divide that it's not a community wide, basic human right. And then also, it really then leaves out also all of the people who want to get pregnant and can't. And so if the ultimate idea of womanhood is to have a baby, then in addition to that being trans exclusionary and incredibly problematic, also creates this shame when you cannot get pregnant yourself and that's what you wanted to have, right? And so we need to be removing the shame of abortion and also removing the shame, right, of infertility, and talking about miscarriages and how hard it is to get pregnant, or how much you didn't want to get pregnant and you did. All of that needs to be taken away. And we need to just be open and honest about how wild it is to have a human body and how different it is for everyone else in their body. So thank you. Yeah.
John?
I wanted to just say how grateful I am to our Jewish sisters in Kentucky and Indiana who are suing states on religious freedom issues, and also the Jewish congregations in Missouri are working with other congregations in suing state of Missouri. And then I was because they said that some of the legislators that are proposing these anti-abortion bills are saying it's based on their religion.
Yes.
And our religious beliefs are different. And so I'm really proud of you. And what I was gonna ask is, in addition to abortion, can you talk about some of the other services and programs that Planned Parenthood is working on? And I really like that, you know, I emphasized about, that, for people that have means, they're always going to have access to birth control and abortion, but it's those people that are on the margins, as you said, that don't, and particularly in the culture wars when there's so much discrimination elements in gender affirming care and all that. Can you talk about some of the efforts that Planned Parenthood has made in that regard?
Yeah,
Great,
I
yeah.
was like, you know the answer too.
Yes, I do too, but yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, so we have 3 health centers right now in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. We offer the full suite of family planning. So that means, you know, birth control, STI, you know, all of these for men and women in our trans community, like across the board. We also offer vasectomies, cancer screenings, both breast and cervical. We also offer gender affirming care, which looks lots of different ways for lots of different people. And that's provided at our 3 health centers as well. What am I forgetting?
Also health centers across the nation, like various Planned Parenthoods, depending on their capacity and their providers that they have working there, offer different types of care as well.
Yeah, some are general
yeah,
practitioners.
yeah.
And you can go there if you have a cold.
Yeah, I mean, some of them provide an even broader array. It's unfortunately though, because of the strain that's being put on Planned Parenthood centers and like the scope that's being put, unfortunately, a lot of them have a lot smaller bandwidth at this point. But I mean, historically, Planned Parenthood centers have been much more of a primary care center than, you know, just, they're not just abortion care centers.
Yeah, almost half of our patients in Alaska, we are their only doctor. We are the only one that they come and see. But then we also have other branches. So then we have our education department. And they provide fully inclusive, accurate, high quality sex education in Anchorage and Juneau, because of, we can get to in a little while, there's a law that restricts the teaching of sex ed across most of the state. And then they also have our teen council, which is my favorite thing that we do. And that's in Anchorage and Juneau. And it's a teen program where a group of about 15 teens are taught to be sex educators. And they do the teaching in the school, because research, I know I love teen council. If you're going to be in Juneau, we're coming in like a week. We're excited. Because we know that teens listen to each other and teens are not afraid to ask each other. And then they also have someone embedded in that school that is a quality source of information. Whenever a question does come up, kids know I can ask this kid, and they'll either know the answer or they'll ask Planned Parenthood and get it for me confidentially and safely. So I love teen council. And then we have our advocacy department. And that's where we're working on legislation. So we have a bill, it's called 12 months of birth control, but it covers a lot of things. So right now your prescriber could write you 12 months of oral contraception, but the insurance company currently in Alaska only allows for 1 to 3 months. So if you live rurally, once again, not an option. But if you're in an unsafe relationship, if you work on the slope, if you work in fire, if you work on a fishing vessel, if you work in tourism, there's large swaths during the year where you're not at your home pharmacy or even near a pharmacy at all. 50% of pregnancies in Alaska are unplanned, and most people say it's because they didn't have access to their birth control. So, but that bill would also cover vasectomies and put a lot of things in law, requiring insurance providers to give everyone access to birth control. So, and also trying to pass a sex ed bill. I'm thinking 7 years. But birth control we're going to do this year.
I think it's also worth mentioning along those lines, you know, as we're talking about vasectomies and other things that are available. I've been really like one of the tiny like glimmers of light in the past, you know, months of everything that's been going on with reproductive rights, has been seeing this like wave of men standing up and going and getting vasectomies. Actually, when I was down in Seattle for the board meeting in December, I was sitting in the hotel room and I had the late news on one night, and they were talking about how they were running out of spots and they were doing like these mobile clinics in Seattle to try to like meet the demand for vasectomies. And yeah, I know. I was like, yes, like some men are getting it. They get it, that they have a part in this, and that there's, there's more to this. And so just
Yeah.
props to
Made me
the
remember
dudes.
another service. We also offer PrEP. So HIV prevention management and PrEP also helps prevent HIV infection. So it's also a service. Yeah.
So while abortion is legal and semi-accessible on that stuff,
Mhm.
the Alaska Attorney General
Yeah.
went with most of other states trying to get rid of access to birth control. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I've been
Yeah,
speaking about it
yeah,
all day, every
yeah.
reporter.
she's well versed on this.
Yeah, so the question was about, sorry, we forgot to do that a couple times. The question, by which I mean a lot, so I apologize. So the question was about, there's a court case in Texas to try to ban across the country mifepristone, which is the medication for medication abortion. And our attorney general here in Alaska filed a brief agreeing with that case. So this case is baseless. And I always feel like people invite me to things and I'm like, everyone's gonna be in a great mood after I come up and talk like the bearer of doom. So this case, what it's saying is that the FDA was wrong in its management of approving of it, which is baseless and false. And then they're claiming that it's unsafe, which is completely baseless. It has been in use for 20 years. 4 million people have taken it. There was, they're saying the process, like there was like a paperwork error. It was not. So it's a completely baseless case, handpicked in that judge's district because they know he won't care. And so this is actually what's terrifying to me. Like we have an entire branch of one of the checks and balances that has completely failed us. Like they put it here because they said this judge will, the appeals judge will, the Supreme Court will uphold this entirely baseless claim. So we believe that quite possibly hasn't been ruled yet. We think next Friday, because they love a Friday. They love to be like, you have weekend plans, Rose. But we think that that's when it will come out, and we think it'll be immediate. And so it doesn't matter if you're an access state or a ban state, every single state will lose access to mifepristone. So what that means is like, again, we are limiting choices, right? So the same with like when you can't take oral contraception and you have to get an IUD, but maybe an IUD is not best for your body, right? So like when I said every abortion is different for every single person, maybe medication abortion was, what was safest or, easiest or, cheapest for, this person. And now that option is gone. We will still be providing abortion, and we will still be providing what's called misoprostol only, but that needs more care.
It's a much more complex route to go for medication abortion. It involves a lot more bleeding, cramping, side effects. The failure rate is a lot higher with misoprostol only. And so one of the really scary parts about the new legislations around the country, so in all of these states where now abortions are banned or essentially banned, that also really impacts medical providers who are being trained in those states. So physicians or other types of providers who are there for residency or other training, they're not able to access training in how to manage not only abortions, but failed abortions and also failed miscarriages. So they're not getting that hands-on training during their residency years of how to deal with a patient who comes into the ER bleeding profusely or is septic because of a failed miscarriage. They're not getting the appropriate training with how to manage those types of patients. So what we're doing is we're taking away the safest form of medication abortion. We are saying that now the only option, unless they go after this one too, which I wouldn't be surprised, is one that has more complications, more risks, and also we're not basically allowing these like large swaths of providers to get trained in how to manage those complex cases.
Is there a path for on that, like other district or in like California, Colorado, Massachusetts?
Right now, we don't see a pathway. It doesn't mean that one won't become apparent, because also court cases, we've mapped out like the 7 scenarios they could say, but maybe they say a sentence differently. And then that, it's just like so complex when it comes to like, what are they actually going to do? And then is there something to be done about that?
A lot of what we do see happening, and this is just from like the public health standpoint, not from like a Planned Parenthood standpoint, it's basically black market. A lot of medications are being brought in across borders. And we've known that for many years. I mean, that's been happening in a lot of border states for many years. But that's increasing and will likely continue to increase, which makes it even more dangerous because people are taking their care into their own hands, which like part of me is like, yeah, you go, like take your care into your own hands. And my day job, I'm all about like empowering people to manage their own blood pressure. This is not something you want to manage on your own. There are major risks to this. And when taking this sort of situation into your own hands, there are a lot of like really life-threatening risks. And then going into what we see happening is that patients will land in ERs, suffering from major complications, afraid to tell providers what really happened. So providers not only don't have the training, but don't have the information for how to properly take care of patients. And so just a lot of.
Yeah, if someone wants to self-manage their own abortion, like here for it, but everyone shouldn't be forced to self-manage their abortion if they would rather go to a medical provider. And then again, yes, like in states like Texas and others where it is criminalized, then when you have a complication, you are making the decision to possibly go to jail, to go to prison, or die.
And I do think it's worth bringing it back to, John, what your point was that, Planned Parenthood serve so many more purposes as well, by cutting and slashing so much of the funding. I mean, this, like we're, Planned Parenthood is we're still alive and well, but I mean, it's struggling, right? And what ends up happening is that all those patients who were going to Planned Parenthood providers for their primary care, for their breast and cervical checks, for, basic maintenance care, routine care, birth control, IUDs, all that sort of stuff, they're not able to get in a lot of times, because centers are shutting down, we don't have the funds to like pay for, I shouldn't say I'm not here as part of Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood doesn't have the funds to keep a lot of the doors open and keep paying the providers. And so a lot of those people who didn't have anywhere else to go for their routine care, that doesn't even include abortions, they're losing their routine care too. So from, me on my public health platform over here, where I'm talking about, don't forget to go for your routine care, get your A1Cs checked, get your blood pressure checked, make sure that you know where your chronic care conditions are being managed and how to manage them. All of that is disappearing for a lot of people as well. Because for many women, and I mean, I'm 37 and I finally got myself a primary care provider because for the last, however.
When you're raised poor, you don't think doctors are like, I don't know, walk it off.
Well, it's true. It's true. But also, I mean, I feel like when you're in your reproductive years, like for me, for the last 6 years, I've been managing pregnancies and babies. And then finally I had my last one, last year. And I was like, okay, well now I don't actually need to see my OB all the time. Now I need a primary care provider, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. And for a lot of people, not just women, but for a lot of people, the providers who were working at places like Planned Parenthood or other similar types of, because there are many other clinics around the country as well that are not part of Planned Parenthood. that was their primary care provider. And the doors are shutting on many of those places as well. And people are losing access to a lot of their other care.
And we also take Medicaid as more and more places are not willing to deal with the paperwork of Medicaid. You know, we still do sliding scale and payment programs, even though we lost the government funding that used to cover those programs. You know, we also are the only providers though of abortions in the state of Alaska. And outside of Identity, shout out to Identity here in Anchorage. We are the only gender affirming healthcare in Alaska. So those services go away completely when Alaska goes away. And also there was, Governor Dunleavy's budget a few years ago. Everyone remembers when he was like elder care, child care, the arts, everything. And the head of Fairbanks Memorial came to our delegation with me and was like, I don't agree with Planned Parenthood. And if the Planned Parenthood in Fairbanks closes, FMH closes, because we cannot take the load of the patients that they see. Like, we will not be able to do it, and we will crumble under the debt of unpaid bills. And I was like, yeah, we do crumble under the debt of unpaid bills, and we will continue providing this care. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions? Anyone want to add anything? Yeah.
So this is Alaska, but it is kind of scary and true that Virginia is not a true person to start at. And they put young women over, and there's somebody trying to push the state where they can conventional histories of young women. I don't know if you know anything about that, have you heard that?
Not enough to speak to it.
I did, the question was about, we're doing terrible at
I
repeating
know, we're
the
doing
questions.
I did the first one.
Sorry. The question was about, in Virginia, laws that are allowing for, young women's menstrual cycles to be requested and tracked. I don't know the details of that. From what I have read, and this was just like reading a New York Times article, there is I don't think it's been passed, but there is a push to be able to, if this is the same one, correct me if I'm wrong, ask for teenage girls' menstrual history to be recorded as part of their application for sports.
That's another
And then,
one.
but then
This is like troopers.
that was for troopers. Okay,
Travel issue.
okay.
I definitely have heard reports, and I know, right, there's lots of things in the work where, they want to track, if you're on a sports scholarship, then you have to track your period and report it.
I
so
don't
that
know
they
about
know.
the trooper one.
Yeah, I lived in Virginia, so that checks out. Oh, what?
That's a good question.
Well, I think we've learned that at this point. It's just like they don't care. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's been concerns.
They're asking them to self-report. They're saying you lose your scholarship if you don't self-report, the same way like you lose your scholarship if you're caught drinking, or that's like how they're getting around it there, where you don't have to take the scholarship.
Google search showed that Florida
Thank you.
currently asks girls playing sports to report their menstrual cycle. Does not require. I believe I saw something the other day where he shall not be named. He's trying to.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So it's a Florida school, my home. So we're really Florida recently. Oh, it's really been bringing it home for all of us.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I lived in Virginia for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if it's happening in Virginia. Yeah. I don't know the details of the Virginia or the Florida laws, but the scary thing about a lot of these places is that when one state kind of paves the way to one of these really ridiculous things, the organizations that are unfortunately insanely organized are taking every success and then dissecting it, learning from it, and trying to implement it in other states. So we should be paying more attention to what's happening in other states, because it's very likely that it will spread to more states after their success in one.
Yeah. Lucky.
Yeah, they take it and run with it.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the big challenges is that, after the Trump administration, unfortunately, Trump had the opportunity, to appoint a very large number of judges across the country, which is going to have generations of impact, because a lot of these things that are being taken to courts instead of to voters are being passed. So
Lucky for all of you, I get paid the big bucks to track all of that BS. And so if you want to get on our actual, me and Casey emailing you about things that are happening in Alaska, not spam. This is my plug. You might get our national, and I apologize for the amount that you're getting from them. I don't get paid that much to fix that. But if you do want, because, in Alaska, we are in a unique position where we could potentially actually be expanding healthcare access, especially after the pandemic. And now that there is, there were so many other things, there was policy and law, but then also just internet access and device access, and people being used to that and figuring out HIPAA with devices, but all of that has happened. And so now we're standing in our own way, and we have proactive legislation, but then also, go back to my gloom and doom, this was never about abortion. It was always about power and control. And who they're coming for next are our trans siblings. So following what they're doing, Florida, Idaho, Texas, that's who's next. And we need to stand up and stop this.
We know that if this was actually about saving lives, that there are tried and true public health, evidence-based practices for saving children's lives.
Yeah.
None of these are that. The way to save babies and children's lives is expanded access to healthcare, expanded access to maternal care, expanded access to childcare, expanded access to food.
Yeah, I told people all the time, I'm like, it's not like before. Someone out there has a great solution. We just need to let them do it. To almost every problem that we face right now. I somehow am an optimist, and I'm just no, somewhere out there, someone has the answer for us, and we just need to listen to them and then do it together. We have all the solutions. We just have to decide to do them together.
So I don't know how long we're supposed to go, but I just want to add, I feel like one thing that's made me really inspired by tonight is seeing that there are so many other people who are actually reading about this and keeping up with it. And I feel like that's, I really think that the people who are pushing a lot of these policies and laws forward, I think they're just assuming and hoping that people kind of forget and ignore it, and it'll get tossed under the rug, and the newest scandal will come and replace it in the news, and we'll be oh, it's fine, we're fine, that's old news. I think the only thing that we can do to keep any sort of spotlight on this and is to keep talking about it and keep reading about it, keep up to date with what's happening, and keep talking about it. I think if anything, if not, unfortunately, I think the coming months and years are going to show us through people dying, that these types of policies do impact everyone, and everyone, whether it's themselves or someone in their family or a loved one, is going to be impacted in the coming years, I think. And so I would just say I'm really happy that so many people here are reading about it and talking about it, and I would just say keep doing it.
Yeah, not afraid to ask questions or invite us on a podium to talk about it. I'm so impressed. It's called a what? A bima. Thank you. Last time I was at Temple was my little brother's bar mitzvah, and that was a very long time ago. Oh, yes, thank you. The bima. Cool.
How long were we supposed to talk? Was that too long or? Okay.
A very nice rabbi answer.
Thank you so much for inviting us here to talk. It was really good.
Now we're gonna have what's called Oneg after this, which is kind of like a reception. I hope you two stick around for that. Okay, we are now moving back into our prayer books, and we are on page 587 for the Elenu. Does that sound right? Yeah, that sounds right. Okay, 587. And when you arrive there, I invite you to stand with me. V'leinu Shabbat la'adon hakol. V'teinu la'leyotzem reishi. Shehu samchel kinlin chedet shemo. V'garatneinu lahamlik malchuto. V'natnu korim. U'mishtachavim u'modim. V'nei ha'lo. We now move to page 591. May we get wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river of understanding. Love each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai v'melech kol haaretz v'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo We now turn to the mourner's cottage, which you can find on page 598 of your prayer books. In our own community, we're thinking about these yard sites this week. Mary Jane Arnovitz, Stanley Brust, Mildred Ellis, and Fred Glazer. We're also in a period of Shloshim for Fred Dichter. If there is someone who you are thinking of, please feel free to say their names out loud or in your hearts. Zikronam livracha, may the memory be for a blessing. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divra chayote v'yamlik malchute, v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'cherechol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen, Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarak le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei kudasha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiram ve'elma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleni ve'akol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleni v'yakol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the one creates harmony on high, bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. You may be seated. Okay, announcement. So tomorrow we have Judaism 101 at 9 over in our Zoom room. We have our morning minyan. Shabbat minyan at 10:30, and then we also have our mobile food bank volunteering opportunity at the Fairview Rec Center at around 12:30-ish. So that's tomorrow. We have religious school on Sunday, and I'm trying to think of all the things we got going on these days. Right, we have our Purim party, a royal Purim, which is on March 6th, of Monday. Please come. It's going to be a costume contest, both for adults and for kids. And so it's a royal Purim. So bring, try to dress up like, royal regalia if you can. We're looking for kings, or queens, princesses, court jesters, court wizards, that kind of business. You know what I mean? And then we'll have like a chumatashin making contest. So if you have a good baking game, please make chumatashins for our contest. And then we'll have a dance party. And some other things going on too. I forget what else. Is there anything else we doing that day? A potluck. It's a potluck. Bring food. Right. Okay. So that's March 6th. On March 26th is what's called our Northern Lights fundraiser. This is the dim lights the youth group used to put off. The youth group has changed the name to Northern Lights. So they're going to have their fundraiser, and you can sign up for it on our website. This is to raise money both for the youth group, but also half the proceeds are going to go to the Alaska Wild Bird Rehabilitation Center. So please come for both our youth group and for that center. They come to Mitzvah Mall and they always bring a bird with them. It's super cool, which is why youth group loves them so much. Okay. And then we have morning minyan on Wednesdays at 8:30 over Zoom. And we have morning minions on Thursdays, 8:30 here in the building, where we go and have the kava pancakes afterwards. So as I say on Thursday, come for the minions, stay for the pancakes. And I think those are all the announcements I can think of. Am I forgetting anything? Did I get them all? I rarely get them all the first try. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Toilet Center is the last Saturday of the month, which is coming up. February is just such a short month. And that's always at 12:30 over on our Zoom room, the last Saturday of the month. We have a guest lecturer for that one. So that's pretty cool. Anything else I'm forgetting? Someone will remind me later. Anyways, so I want to conclude this evening with the Misha Berach, a prayer for healing. Think of everyone who suffered or struggled with reproductive rights. So that's on page 371. Could I find what? I'm sorry. Oh, did you really? Okay, cool. I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to be maybe like a court historian. I think is what I want to go with, or maybe some kind of court wizard is the vibe I'm going for. Court rabbi wizard, yes, yeah. Okay, if there's someone who you are thinking of who is in need of healing, please say their names out loud in your hearts. And in our own community, we're thinking about Emily Weaver, Ginger Spiro, John Johnson, Pat Victor, Janice Breeze, Ross Rumack, Cheryl Limbriani, Ian Clift, Kelly Bot Eli, Hannah Franklin, Dale Cuban, Frank Erwiskin, and Sharon Joy McDonald. Rach avotenu mekor habracha laimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha liavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat shalom, y'all.